Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday night, which means it's time for Friends and Fiction. Tonight's highlighted novels will take us to war-torn Europe before and after World War II. I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
I'm Kristin Harmel.
I'm Meg Walker.
And I'm Ron Block.
Now we're gonna go a little nuts tonight from our usual format because we have a very important message. You might notice we're all drinking heavily.
We are exhausted.
Champagne.
We're absolutely giddy with excitement right now because we just got the news that Patti's The Secret Book of Flora Lee just hit the New York Times bestseller list at number 8.
Woo! Woo! So exciting!
Cheers to Patti!
Cheers to Patti! Cheers to all of us who have stressed
How about it?
and panicked. I'm just kidding. Cheers, Patti. You are amazing.
Cheers, Patti. I think Patti might be able to
Patti.
sneak away from her event and join us for a second, but
Oh, she's here. She says she's backstage.
Oh,
she's here.
Oh.
You guys, I'm so excited. I'm in a library. Could it be any more apropos? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
right?
Okay, first of all, I have to say there is no way this would have been near as much fun without you. And nobody could stress as much as y'all have. And I feel like I am celebrating not with you, but like with you. Like you are mine. You guys, this has been such an incredible journey. I am so excited. When they told me, they called right when I was walking to this event. I'm at a history center. And I ran outside and Meg Walker called me. And I couldn't even understand her. I was like, try again.
Can you say where you were crying though, Meg? Because I think that's the best part.
Yeah, the parking lot of the liquor store.
Oh my God, that's the best part. I'm in the parking. So I ran out to the parking lot of this history center and I kind of fell to my, like in a crouch and I was crying and I looked, y'all, and there was a feather in front of me.
Oh,
No.
Oh, I just got chills all over.
And I picked it up and I put it in my purse and I will keep it forever. And you guys are the best in the whole world.
We love you. We're so
love
proud.
you.
We love you.
Yeah, we're
So
thrilled
excited.
for you.
So thrilled for you.
And I'm dying to stay and talk to Martha Hall, and I'm dying to stay and talk to Jennifer, but they're waiting for me out there, and there are 200 people, and please tell them how much I love their books and love them, and I love you guys. And
We love you.
We love
We
you.
love you guys.
Cheers,
Cheers.
Patti. We love you.
Cheers,
Celebrations.
Sean, thanks for your text. You're the best.
Oh, we have Alan tonight,
We have
but
Alan
Sean
tonight.
did text you.
Oh, hi, Alan.
Sean's in Hamilton. But I just want to say quickly a huge thanks to the Friends of Fiction community because having been on the
Yes.
road with Patti for the past 10 days, or the first 10 days of tour, so many people from the Friends of Fiction community showed up, and the book is just soaring at the Independence, which has been our mission from the jump. And this would not have happened without this group. Without this group on the screen, but without the group in the wider world out there. So we love you guys, and we are so grateful.
And Meg is so right. Meg's been traveling with me for 8 days. I know she's so sad to be home and not be on the road with me.
I do miss you. I'll see you tomorrow.
I miss you too. I'll see you tomorrow. But Meg, you are right. Friends in Fiction, y'all showed up at every event. You wear your t-shirts. You buy them in multiples. You make us feel like we are the queens and kings. You are the wind beneath our metaphorical and probably literal wings. And you post on the page, and yeah, now it's time for the Paris daughter. Coming up
Next
next.
up.
Let's go. Let's
I do
go.
have to say that was literally my next thought after like, oh my God, I'm so excited. This is so great. This is the best day ever. And then like 5 minutes later, I was like, okay, time for the Paris daughter. Let's go next.
Next up.
Let's go.
Let's
All
go,
right,
family.
next
Let's
up.
go, family.
Let's go.
Bring it on.
Friends and fiction family, you are the best of the best. I love you guys.
Absolutely.
Annabelle.
Love you.
All right,
Love you,
enjoy your
Patti.
event.
Congratulations.
And Meg.
Oh.
too.
Oh,
There you are.
she'll just be popping in all night.
That's
I need
right.
a cliffhanger.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Ah, what a great day. I mean, it's been so much work and so much time and so much effort and so much support from, like she said, the Friends in Fiction community. It's just been unbelievable. It's kind of like Flora took off.
She did. She sure did.
Well, like even when we were all in Charleston together and it was like the night before pub, it's like you could feel it, you know, like everybody was just there and everybody was so excited and it was awesome. It's been great.
And Patti was here with me in Cleveland last night, and you know, there was no nerves at all. There was no thought about it. There was no.
She's so good at giving this book talk, y'all. Really
She
does.
She is.
Unbelievable.
I love it because people, you could see them leaning up to listen to her more closely as she tells the story.
Lots more events. So go see her if she's coming near you. That's for sure.
Check her
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah, you guys can check Patti's website and check her social media on Instagram and Facebook, and of course on Friends in Fiction. You can see where she's going to be. She's got a lot more territory to cover, and we got a lot of territory to cover tonight.
Yeah,
Yes.
So get rid of the riffraff.
Get rid of
duck
us.
out.
Love you guys.
Bye, guys.
Good to see y'all.
All right, we're going to roll. This is Friends in Fiction. 4 New York Times best-selling authors, including number 8 New York Times instant bestseller Patti Henry, and the stories that support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians. Tonight, we're welcoming old friends Jennifer Robson and Martha Hall Kelly.
Of course, you know that we're here to bring you incredible authors, hot reads, and fascinating interviews, all while supporting independent booksellers. And one way you can help us support indies is to buy from them when and where you can, or visit our own Friends in Fiction bookshop.org page, where you can find Jennifer's and Martha's books and books by the 4 of us, including number 8 on this week's New York Times bestseller list, The Secret Book of Flora, at a discount.
And speaking of amazing books, like the number 8 bestseller, The Secret Book of Flora Lee, don't forget to join the Friends in Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa on their Facebook page. So right now they're reading Coronation Year, and we'll be welcoming tonight's guest, author Jennifer Robson, to discuss the book with them live this coming Monday, May 15th at 7 p.m. So I don't think we've ever done this before, where we have a guest on the show one week and then just a few days later they're on the book club.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be great because we'll kind of cover the broad strokes tonight, and they'll dig in really deep for anyone who's actually read the entire book on Monday. So make sure to show up for that.
Perfect. Now, you guys have been listening to our Writer's Block podcast, right? The one that drops every Friday on all major podcasting platforms. We'll always post a link to the newest episode on our Facebook page and Instagram feed. On our most recent episode, out now, Ron and Patti talked to Mary Beth Kane about her new novel, The Half Moon. Coming this Friday, May 12th, Ron and Kristy will be talking to Laura Hankin about her novel, The Daydreams. So listen, review, subscribe, and share with a friend if you like what you hear.
Oh, and I also have to add that Mary Beth Keane episode, Patti talks about The Secret Book of Flora Lee also. It's like a half and half episode.
Oh,
So
cool.
if you want to hear a little bit more about that, she goes into a little bit of detail with Ron there too.
All right, now without further ado, let's welcome Jennifer Robson.
Oh, so Jennifer is the best-selling author of 7 novels set during and after the 2 World Wars, including Somewhere in France, Goodnight from London, and The Gown. She was also a contributor to the acclaimed anthology Fall of Poppies, Stories of Love and the Great War.
Born and raised in Peterborough, Ontario, Jennifer studied French literature and modern history as an undergraduate at King's University College at Western University, then attended St. Anthony's College at the University of Oxford, where she obtained her doctorate in British economic and social history.
She now lives in Toronto with her husband and children, and she shares her home office with Bonnie the sheepdog and her feline companions, Mika, Rachel, and Obi. Her new novel, Coronation Year, a very timely novel indeed, just released last month. Alan, can you bring Jennifer on?
Hi, everyone. Oh, what a delight. If I'm kind of going like this with my eyes, it's because I got so choked up when Patti was on. I just, we were talking about this. The New York Times is kind of the list is unpredictable. And when a friend lands pretty high on the list, it's just the best feeling.
It really
Yeah,
is.
I'm actually still
When a friend lands dangling on the end, we're like,
I know. I admit I have my wish for someday. I think, again, I probably will. It'll have to wait until, I published in hardcover. Who knows when that'll happen? But I would be very comfortable with 1 week at 15.
Yeah.
And that's it. But you know what? It's a journey, and as my wonderful literary agent has said to me, it's a marathon, right? It's a marathon, and I think of it as the Camino, right? In Spain, just got to keep plugging along.
Well, and also you are a bestseller in Canada. You're a perennial
Huge
on the Globe and
bestseller.
Mail bestseller list, right?
Yeah, and which is I'm very grateful for, and this is just the best gig. I had a lovely event at one of the branches of the Toronto Public Library last night that is closest to my home. So it was slightly stacked with neighbors and friends, but it was a nice big crowd, and people were so lovely, and getting to connect to people, talking about my books, nerding out over history with them. Like there's just no better job. I feel so fortunate, and the friends I've made, like writer friends, are really terrific friends to have. Yeah.
Agreed. All right. So the world just witnessed England's first coronation in 70 years.
Yeah.
For King Charles. I gotta ask everybody, how did everybody celebrate or not? Jen, you go first.
So I have a group of wonderful friends. We've been watching these, royal occasions together for the better part of 15 years. And I think the first one we watched together was the royal wedding, Will and Kate. So that's 2011. And then since then, there's been a jubilee. There's been another royal wedding. There's been 2 funerals, and now the coronation. And so I was up. Like my husband thought I was crazy, but I got up at, I think about 3:30, 3:45, and I went over to my friend Jane's house, and we had scones and tea, and then we got some champagne, and it was, I've kind of lived and breathed the 1953 coronation for the last couple of years. So I had the advantage over like non-history nerds in that I knew pretty much what was coming, but there's still a lot of surprises for me. I found I was surprised by how moved I was at certain parts of the proceedings. Yeah.
Well, I have to admit, I was blissfully asleep as Charles was being crowned, but I did commemorate the occasion with a nice cuppa in my Jubilee coronation mug on Saturday morning. Kristy, what about you?
I love that. I have to admit that I did not get up either, but I loved watching everyone's coverage on Instagram and seeing all the pictures and like watching the video clips after. It was really fun. And I do have to say, I've been talking about this on social media, but I have to show y'all because it seemed very appropriate. Because I thought this was cool in July, but now I really think it's cool. So this is British Vogue. This is the July issue. And this is our now Queen Camilla.
Yeah.
This book she's reading right here is Under the Southern Sky.
Isn't that amazing? Oh my gosh.
And here's a letter that she wrote to me about it. Oh, did I just? And it was nuts. So
that's
I look
amazing.
like I'm going out on I think my internet's being funky. But anyway, so I went back and looked at that and I was like, whoa, the Queen of England.
That is so cool.
I know.
So
I may have prayed more than once that somehow one of my royal books would find its way into her hands. But
Maybe they
I'm
still will. You never
maybe I
know.
just have to send her one, right? At the very least, you get a very nice thank you note from one of the ladies in waiting, and
There you go.
you never know, she might be moved to actually read it. But
Yeah.
That
You never
would
know.
yeah,
be
but
amazing.
you have documentary proof, Kristy,
This was
in Vogue.
this was real bizarre. Like one of the craziest, coolest things that's ever happened. So who knows? Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, for me, watching the I certainly like how do you even follow that, right? Like, oh well, I mean, the Queen wrote Kristy a letter, but I get up and had scones on my couch, so same, pretty much, yeah. But I got up and had scones on my couch, and there was clotted cream, so I was delighted about that. Turns out
Yeah.
World Market sells a pretty decent shelf-stable clotted cream, which
Mhm.
now I will be buying in bulk in the future because clotted cream is delicious. And I texted a whole bunch with my mom, who is also a little bit of a royal watcher. So we commented on all the fashion and where people were sitting, and Feathergate blocking
Yeah.
Harry, and it was an interesting and enjoyable morning. And I appreciated that later in the day there were Kentucky Derby hats too. So it was just a
Yeah.
day full of fascinators.
Yeah.
It was
It was
absolutely
such an
fantastic.
interesting day. And I think clotted cream trumps like pretty much anything. So I think
So
that your
true.
story
It's
did win on
it's
that
when
account.
I mean,
Queen
it
reaches
really,
Nirvana.
I hate to
Yeah.
say, but I mean, in comparison to getting a letter from the Queen, clotted cream really does obviously come out ahead.
I have to disagree with you. I don't think clotted cream trumps a lovely mint julep.
Oh, that's true. That's
Just
true.
saying.
Yes.
All right, now enough about us. Let's dive into coronation here. Jennifer, tell us the elevator pitch. Now we know this novel is about way more than just the Queen's coronation, right?
Yeah. I've had some people write to me and say, I thought it was going to be about the Queen, and I bite my tongue and refrain from saying, well, there's this handy thing called the synopsis that's on the back of the book, and I can understand that. I mean, it makes for a really striking cover, but the Queen is she is a character in the novel, very much a secondary one. There are three main characters whose point of view the novel kind of moves between, but then I would argue there's a fourth central character, which is the Blue Lion Hotel, which is the setting for most of the book, and it's a historic hotel founded in 1560 by the direct ancestor of one of my central characters, Edie Howard, and she's the last of the Howards. She's doing her best to keep this hotel open. It's kind of lurched from minor crisis to minor crisis through the centuries, and there's never been enough money to keep it in a really up to date state. And she's, especially since the war, she's really struggled to find guests and keep it open. And it's not just because it's her family business that she wants to keep it open. There are her employees to think of who lose their jobs and homes if she has to sell up or close. And then she has some long-term residents who are characters, let's say the least, who really have nowhere else to go. Her waifs and strays, I think of them. And so we meet Edie, and then we meet two other characters who've come to London to document the coronation. And the first of them is Stella Donati, who, if anyone happened to read my previous book, Our Darkest Night, Stella was a character in that. And I wanted to know what happened to her after the war. And the best way of finding out is to turn her into a character in another book and do the work of figuring out what becomes of her. And then the third character is a young man called Jamie Geddes, who is a veteran of World War II. He worked in bomb disposal during the war, is really struggling with post-war life. And he's also a very talented fine artist who's won a commission to paint the Queen on Coronation Day. And he's also biracial. His father is Scottish and his mother is originally from India. And so growing up visibly not Caucasian in Britain in this mid-century period is tough for him. And so I have bring the 3 characters together, and the reason that it's centered on the Blue Lion, is that this hotel, which is totally imaginary, you won't find it if you go to London, it never was there, but it's on the coronation procession route. So as we saw last weekend, there were huge crowds gathered, to watch the king and queen go by in the Gold State coach, and, in 53, the crowds were even bigger. And just being on the coronation route meant if you were a hotel, you could charge an absolute fortune for your rooms. This is the key to Edie possibly being able to keep the Blue Lion afloat. So that's how I bring it together. And then, of course, there's a bad guy. Not going to say who really does. A guy person who does their best to completely upend coronation day, not just for the queen, but for the people at the hotel, and possibly specifically for Edie herself.
Wow. So great. Well, your 2018 novel, The Gown, dealt with a pair of seamstresses who helped Norman Hartnell create Princess Elizabeth's gown for her 1947 wedding. And now you've transported us to 1953 London in the run-up to the new Queen's coronation, as you mentioned. Did you have this progression in mind when you finished The Gown?
Very faintly, I did. I always knew I wanted to come back to London and see what had happened farther into the post-war period. 1947, when The Gown is set, it's still a really bleak time. People were struggling in the post-war period. There were still so many shortages. Everything was rationed. Anything that you wanted was either rationed or just unavailable in the shops. Whereas, here in North America, life was back to normal pretty quickly in the post-war period. But in Europe, people struggled for many years. And so I had a little discursion along the way to Italy in World War II. That was a book I just had to write. I couldn't kind of postpone it. But then I came back and to England, and I thought, well, what was life like for ordinary people in 1953? Not for the royal family. Again, I just think there's so much written about them. I didn't feel there's anything I could personally add to their story. But I did think that the contrast between them, at one point on Saturday, the Archbishop of Canterbury referred to the king's exalted state. And I take that with a grain of salt, even though as a Canadian, the king is the head of state for us here. But I do think they occupy this exalted position that is so far from where the rest of us live. The contrast between between them and the rest of us is so acute. It bears looking at, and especially in 93, where class differences were even more pronounced. And I wanted to know, like, I started with this premise of what was it like to stand in the street on June 2nd, 1953, and watch the Queen go by in the Gold State coach. And this person who'd be almost like of another, living in another dimension, really, so distant, but yet she's there. She's almost close enough that you could reach out and touch her. And what was that like? And could it affect your life? And then from there, I had all sorts of ideas of how could it affect an ordinary person. And I ended up landing on the idea of a hotel, because let's face it, hotels are catnip for writers. I mean, it's just such a great setting. So many interesting things happen, and then you can kind of force people into proximity who wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet, which is also, again, a very handy kind of in your your bucket of tools for the writer. That's oh gosh, forced proximity, putting people together from different walks of life, all of that, and the temporary nature of it is also really fun to explore.
Well, speaking of the hotel, right, and setting it in this hotel, you had to do, I would imagine, research to get these characters' jobs right, and you have such a total grasp of your characters' livelihoods in this book, right? So Edie, as you mentioned, is the owner/manager of a crumbling centuries-old inn. So you schooled us in this book in innkeeping. James is a war hero suffering from shell shock, as well as being a gifted artist, and Stella is a magazine photojournalist. So can you talk us a little bit? You talked about where Stella came from. She came from one of your previous books. But can you talk to us a bit about where the development of these characters came from, how you went about researching their day-to-day professional lives, and whether any of those skills like painting or photography or innkeeping rubbed off on you?
Oh, so I can say for the skills, nothing. So for the gown, I did. It's right here. It's this embroidery. I I went to England, and here's a little factoid that I haven't managed to share yet. Everyone remembers Penny Mordaunt, who is the woman in blue with who holding the sword, which apparently is like an 8-pound sword. And one of the writers for the Guardian tried doing it and said like he was like this after about 2 minutes. And she had that beautiful ensemble that she had the hat with the gold, and then there was the gold on her lapels. That embroidery was done by the same embroiderers who taught me how to do this at
No
a place called Hand
kidding.
and Lock in London. Sorry, I'm
Oh,
trying to
that's
not get
really
the
cool.
yeah.
That's so cool.
So when I saw it was Hand and Lock, I was like, oh my gosh, the connection with history. And they did also a
Yeah.
lot of the other embroidery on the robes and gowns that you saw. But for this, I didn't think, gosh, I think I need to go and do an apprenticeship at a hotel. Although I have had some crazy ideas in the past about things I need to do in order to get the research right. And then my
Yeah.
editor usually says, Jen, nobody expects you to go like and do, an apprenticeship in embroidery. Like a 1-day workshop is more it's more than enough. With the hotels, you know what I did? I found all sorts of interesting hotel management guides from the period
Oh,
that were
wow.
really informative and interesting. And then I talked to people who do that work today. The technology has changed, but the principles of
Yeah.
hospitality really endure. In terms of talking about Amy's past as a bomb disposal officer, that was kind of the most straightforward thing to research because there are quite a number of memoirs of officers who did that work in the war, and it made for some really harrowing reading at times. The things that these men went through.
I
One
bet.
thing that surprised me, it probably shouldn't have, but it was interesting to me that in these small kind of groups of the bomb disposal crews, there would be one, possibly two officers, and then men from other ranks. And if you'd asked me, I would have thought, well, the way things go, probably the men from the enlisted men would be the ones who'd be expected to go down and do the dangerous work. And interestingly, it's the opposite. If you were the officer, it was your duty alone
Wow.
to go into and this was the bomb disposal during the Blitz, and then in the campaigns in North Africa, Italy, and Europe. It saved bombs had fallen and they were unexploded, they had to be disposed of, and
Wow.
the officers themselves were expected to go in. And so to me, that just instantly made Jamie so heroic,
Yeah.
so worthy. I mean, I wanted to create a hero here that everyone from that go would say, this is a really special man.
Yeah.
And then actually for bits that I don't want to get into detail, I think we can talk about in the book club. There are some bits about how one constructs bombs and things like that, that I actually went to my uncle, who's a retired colonel in the Canadian forces, and we actually did all of that over the phone. Because he was a little concerned that emails, we might get onto the wrong radar.
Oh, right.
I think it's just us being excessively careful, but you really maybe don't want to be bandying about stuff like that.
That's
And
fair.
he was very helpful. And then for the photojournalism, I went to my other uncle, who is a retired teacher of photography and a photographer, and a historian. And he was so informative about photography in the 1950s, the kinds of cameras people used, just, like things about like the speed of the film. And this is before telephoto lenses. So there were no long lenses. You had to really, for example, if you wanted to get a really good clear shot, you would have to have a long exposure with really good light, and then just hope that your focus was just
Wow.
impeccable, because then you could go in and blow it up. And so figuring out what kind of cameras my character Stella would use, the kind of photographs she was taking, I went back and forth with Uncle John like so many times. But I felt one of his interests is photojournalism in that period, because my grandparents, and I've talked about this before, and talking to Mary Kay, who understands what it's like to be a newspaper woman, as my grandma called herself. My grandparents were both newspaper. She was a staff writer with several Vancouver newspapers, and he was an editor for many years. That's how they met. And so, I just thought having, I quite often, not always, but I quite often end up having journalists in my books. And I think it's because of that family connection.
That's awesome.
So that's where a lot of the research came from. And one thing that I rely on a lot are ads, of all things. So things like, what kind of camera would she have used? I went into photography magazines in the 1950s to see what was actually available and how much it cost at the time. So nerd things like that, which I
Interesting.
That's
love.
awesome.
It's very helpful. Okay, so now you talked a little bit about the Blue Lion, and you admitted you made it all up. I'm headed to London in 10 days.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is there, because before I got to your author's note, I'm like, well, I'm going to find the Blue Lion. I'm going to go in there.
Yeah.
And so was there one inn that acted, or were there more than one that acted as your inspiration for the Blue Lion? And then I want you to talk about the Blue Lion's long-term guests / pests. I love are they the Ons or the Hans?
The Ons. Yeah, the Ons.
HONS.
So the Blue Line. So yes, there's no Blue Line. Although you can go to a wonderful pub called the Sherlock Holmes, which is in that exact spot.
I can remember that, the Sherlock Holmes.
The Sherlock Holmes, and it's right now. They have tables out front, and someone sent me a short video they'd taken this weekend, where of course it was thronged with guests because it was right. It wasn't actually on the route, to be honest. They skipped that part of the route. They just kind of did an up and back, whereas in my book they do an up and across and down like that. But nonetheless, it was right in the thick of things, and people were clearly having a really good time. So it exists. The hotel that I based a lot of my kind of suppositions on, and in terms of describing the interior and getting a sense of what it was like, and just the sense of being in a quite an old building, where, let's face it, there isn't a single right angle in this entire building. Like, if you put a marble on any single floor, it's not going to stay. It's just going to go off in some other direction. There's a hotel called Hazlitt's, H-A-Z. I have to remember to say Z, not Z. HAZLITT''S, and it's in Soho on Frith Street, which I also feel as if I'm pronouncing Frith Street. And it is in a Georgian building. So dating just to the early 1700s. Although the Blue Line itself, the kind of the hidden interior bits that have been covered by a Victorian exterior date to, probably the 1300s. But it's still a very old building, and it's just the restoration of this building is beautiful. They haven't done too much. It doesn't feel museum-y. It feels like a house that has been lived in continuously, and with kind of eccentric bath fixtures in the rooms, and delicious. Oh my gosh, the English breakfast is just, they have to be honest, a bacon sandwich that is a thing of beauty. And
so good.
wonderful staff, like really friendly people. Nobody the slightest bit like any of my characters. I should add that I did not attempt to impersonate any of the hotel staff. And they have a cat, a very elderly cat called Sir Godfrey, and a little garden in the center. And it's just an amazing place. And interestingly, early last week, the Prince and Princess of Wales went to a pub in Soho, and you saw them kind of drawing pints of beer and thanking hospitality workers. It was kitty corner to the hotel, and my son and I had dinner at, I think, at the Duck and Dog when we were there in January. And so the Hazlitt's is where I typically stay when I go to London. And by London standards, it's a relatively inexpensive hotel, which is to say it would shock, the prices would shock anyone who isn't routinely used to going to London, or say New York City. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I, in terms of the atmosphere, that's where I took a lot of the Blue
Wow.
Line. Although the hot water, they have lots of hot water. There's no issues with their boiler. And then there's
No
all of
tunnels.
there's no tunnels, and all of the hotel staff are perfectly well-adjusted, normal people. So you don't have to worry about any
As
strange
far as you
goings
could
on,
tell.
as far as I could tell. In terms of the long-term inhabitants, so there's Professor Thurlow, who was bombed out in the war and has kind of arrived at the hotel and is quite eccentric, and maybe there's elements of various professors I had in university kind of woven into his character. And he's just very intent on doing his work, and kind of to the exclusion of anything else. To be honest, he reminds me of some of the professors I had at Oxford who had never really lived in the real world. To be honest, if you're an Oxford Don, you just kind of live there in perpetuity, with really very little connection with the real world. And then the Ons were just a complete fantasy. And I just imagined they just came to me kind of one day, these sisters who had been effectively tossed out on their ear when their father died unexpectedly back in the 1920s. And their cousin, I think they call him, horrible cousin Dominic. And he had tossed them out, kind of didn't pay any attention to the will of their father, and so they've been living on in the Blue Lion in very reduced circumstances since then, and are and they're there to show Edie's humanity, and Edie's compassion for other people, even when those other people are extraordinarily irritating and demanding and selfish, because Edie also has the ability uh, to see beyond their irritating behavior and realize that these are two old ladies who are completely at the they have no resources, they have no life skills whatsoever, and really would like two little lost kittens if she set them out in the street, and she knows it. And so that's part of Edie's problem, is that she has three long-term boarders eating her out of house and home, paying practically nothing, using up three of her best rooms, and um how is she supposed to make ends meet? But she just doesn't can't find it in her heart to tell them to go elsewhere. Yeah, this book, I really wanted it to ultimately, even though there's moments of peril and drama, I want this to feel like a warm hug for people.
Mm.
I think we all want a warm hug these days. And
Well, it definitely feels like that. All right, Jennifer, we have loved talking to you. Before you go, where can everybody find you online? And are you still doing any tour events?
I'm doing, it's more local in Canada. I'm doing some literary festivals, and they'll get a little more intermittent going into the fall. And then, well, through the summer, I'm actually in Scotland for most of the summer because my daughter is a Highland
Oh,
dancer. We're,
terrible.
we're going over there. She's dancing for
Wow.
the King in September
Wow.
at the Braemar
Wow.
Gathering, which is very exciting.
That's
She's not
awesome.
the only one, I should add. There's a number of girls who are invited, but and then there'll be a few bits and pieces. But I've sadly finished my travels in the States for a while, which I would love to go back down, but we will see. You never know. And then there's the next book in a year or two.
Yeah,
So
definitely. All right. Thank you so much, Jen. We'll see you
thanks.
soon, I hope.
So
Hi,
good to
Jen.
see
Good to see
you.
you.
Okay, bye bye.
Thanks for coming.
Now, we're excited to get to Martha Hall Kelly, but first, some more messages from us.
Well, you might have heard that all four of us have new releases coming this year, and we have some simply amazing events coming up. You can catch us live and as a group multiple times this year. Join us next in Huntsville, Alabama on June 6th for the launch of Kristin's novel, The Paris Daughter. Then we'll be in Tampa, Florida on July 20th at Oxford Exchange for the launch of my new book, The Summer of Songbirds. Then we'll be in Beaufort, North Carolina, my hometown, on August 1st for a breast cancer fundraiser. And last but absolutely not least, we'll be in Darien, Connecticut on October 4th to launch Mary Kay's Bright Lights, Big Christmas.
And how awesome would it be if all of you made all of our books a 4-peat bestsellers.
I like that.
Just
It's a
saying.
good one. Just
Yeah.
saying, you have the power.
Just saying, yes, and not to belabor a point, but Kristin's up next, and
Subliminal messaging time.
I really am. I really do have to say this though, and I absolutely mean this. So I picked it up the other night because I was like, I'm just going to read like a chapter really quick just to like familiarize myself. I mean, I know what it's about because we've talked about it, and so I sat down and I read like 80 pages and I was like, Kristy, you have got to go do the next thing. And so then last night I was like, I'm just going to read. I'm really tired. I'm going to read like one chapter before I go to bed. And I read like 115 pages before I went to bed. I was like 200 pages into this book in 2 sittings, which I have to say does not happen because y'all know we all have so much to read all the time. And so this is like not next in my TBR. And I was like, I'm just going to like read a little tiny bit because I need to be reading something else.
Sweet. So thank you. That's really nice. Thanks a lot.
Wow, you cheated on your TBR list. That's major.
That's big. That's a big deal.
Okay, everybody, just want to quickly make sure you're signed up for our Friends in Fiction newsletter and for our individual newsletters, so you're the first to know everything going on.
All right. So now it is time for our next guest, Martha Hall Kelly. So Martha is the best-selling author of several novels, including Lilac Girls, her debut, which became an instant New York Times bestseller in 2016, and went on to sell more than 2 million copies in 50 countries. Wow. The novel is based, as we've talked about on the show before, because we've had Martha on before, it's based on the true story of 72 Polish women who were imprisoned and experimented on at Ravensbrück concentration camp, and how Caroline Faraday, an American philanthropist, brought them to the U.S. for rehabilitation and the trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, that book wrecked me. Okay, Martha followed her debut with Lost Roses about Caroline's mother, and then with Sunflower Sisters about Caroline's great-grandmother. Martha grew up in Massachusetts and now splits her time between Litchfield, Connecticut, Hobe Sound, Florida, and New York City.
Her latest novel, The Golden Doves, just came out on April 18th, and I can speak for all of us and say that we absolutely loved it. Patti called it meticulously researched, hauntingly told, and inspired by real events that span generations and continents, while Kristin said in her blurb that it is a pulse-pounding tale of vengeance, mystery, and family. And I called it literary perfection, which it is. So we were lucky to get early reads. And Alan, can you please bring Martha on so we can tell her how much we love her?
Oh,
Martha! You're the best blurbers in the whole world. I have Thank you for having me on this special night when Patti hit the list. I get to drink. This is so exciting.
Here's to Patti.
And here's to Martha, and here's to Jennifer.
Absolutely.
It's a historic fiction night around here.
It is. It is.
You're killing it. Kristy, the Queen had your book.
How cool, right?
I can't even
it was bizarre.
Wait, Martha, you say that like it's cooler than having clotted cream on my couch. It's so strange that you would think that's cooler.
Now your book is coming. Oh my God, The Paris Daughter. Oh, people are just they don't know what is coming. I mean, talk about being wrecked. Yeah. And then Mary Kay, you have a Christmas book coming out. You guys are just killing it. So
thank you.
Oh, Martha.
So fun.
But you were killing it. We are so excited to talk to you tonight about the Golden Doves. We're just so glad to have you back with us. We just love having you on, and it's just great to have you here. So let us dive in. So The Golden Doves is about 2 former spies, American Josie Anderson and Parisian Arlette Leroux, who are bound together by their experience during World War II and who risk everything to hunt down an infamous Nazi doctor after the war. But there is also so much more going on beneath the surface of this book. So can you tell us what this novel is really about, Martha?
Sure. I just wanted to write. I wrote it during COVID, and I just wanted to write something that took me away from my house in Litchfield where I was stuck. And I wanted to write about 2 best friends as well. I lost my own best friend when I was in my 30s. And I feel like every time I write a book, I write that same like friendship that I wish was still continuing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so that's what I wanted to do in this book as well. And that's why Josie, an American, and Arlette, who is half German and half French. But while I was out on my book tour for Lilac Girls, I met a Holocaust survivor who talked to me about, it was a really sad story. She had been experimented on by Josef Mengele when she was a child. She was only 8. And when she told me the story, she dropped me off at my hotel room, at my hotel, and I sat in the back seat of this car, which she and her daughter had driven me in. And she just told me the whole story. And I just thought, how did he escape? How did we let that happen? So that led me down this path of trying to figure out, how did all those Nazis, the fugitives, who had done such horrible things, how did they just get away? So that led me to the rat line, the so-called Nazi rat line. And I knew I wanted to have that in the book for sure. So it's these two women, best friends, who don't get along that well at first, but which was kind of like my best friend. But then when we became best friends, it just was, we were inseparable. And that's what happens with these two in occupied Paris. And they become radio operators, and they outwit the Gestapo and become known as the Golden Doves. They're only 17 years old. Unfortunately, they get caught, they go to Ravensbrück, and each loses something really important at the camp. One loses their mother, the other loses their son. Because, children at a concentration camp, you can imagine. So the story actually starts 8 years later in Fort Bliss, Texas. And Josie, the American, is back at Fort Bliss vetting German scientists who are coming to the country. And it's her job to kind of make sure these guys come over and haven't done anything too horrible, former Nazis. But she's looking for this terrible doctor that did terrible things to them at the camp. And her boss comes to her and says, would you like to find this doctor that you want to go hunt him down? So yes, spoiler, she says yes. And then meanwhile in Paris, Arlette is working at a cafe, and a man comes in, a wealthy man, attractive somewhat, and says to her, I think I know where your son is, and offers to have her come to South America to this orphanage to see if he's there.
Which is so compelling. I thought that was just one of the threads of the book that just pulled me through. And I wanted to find her son so much. It was such an important thing to me throughout the book. And I love knowing that background about your friendship and how these books are in some ways an ode to that friendship, because you do write friendship very beautifully in all of your books, but particularly in this book.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Oh, well, no, I mean, it's just something you do a great job with. I just wanted to ask you quickly, and I'm glad you mentioned it. You mentioned Irene Zisblatt. Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah.
Zisblatt. And for those who want to know a little bit more about that, I know you write about it in your author's note. You write about talking to her in your author's note, and also in the book club kit that can be found, I think, on your publisher's website. So at 93, it sounds like she is still such a tremendous force. What message do you think that she would want readers of your novel to absorb?
Oh my God, I'm getting huge chills just having you talk about her. She's amazing. I think the message that she gave me, which is we cannot forget. She goes around and talks to, like, one day I was Skyping with her and she was going to talk to like the Joint Chiefs or something,
At 93, that's incredible.
Yes, she's so sharp. And she's talking to them about how the rise of National Socialism is back and how we need to stop it. So I think when I saw her, she had a pin on and it was in little Hebrew letters. And I said, oh, that's a beautiful pin. And she took it off and pinned it on me and said, this means never forget, always remember. And she said, you need to go do a mitzvah, which I had to look that up because I'm not Jewish, but it means, go do something good. So I think that is the message that she would want me to give.
I think that. You've done it. I think right.
Thank you, Kristy. Yeah. I can tell Irene, mission accomplished.
Yes, exactly.
Martha, you mentioned the rat lines, and I know that you traveled to northern Italy and Rome to understand the Nazi rat line. Would you talk to those? I mean, there will be some people who haven't read it yet. We want them to talk to us about that. And how, I mean, it seems like you have such a sense of bringing justice to criminals. Would you talk about that, even if justice is long delayed?
You know, Mary Kate, that's such a good question. That is exactly what was happening with this book. I felt like there was such an injustice done that all these guys just got away. And once I dug into it, I just got more and more angry with the whole situation, even though this happened at the end of World War II. And what I found out was that the Catholic Church helped these men come across the border and come down through Italy and stay at monasteries dressed as monks oftentimes. It's like safe houses. And there was a man named Bishop Udall, and he was at the Vatican. And he was hiding them at his church, which is still there in Rome, and in a place called the Collegium, right, like adjacent to the Vatican City. So as soon as COVID was over and they lifted travel restrictions, my husband and I made a beeline for Italy, and we traced the route line, and we went from the very tippity top where Mengele stayed at the Golden Cross, and we made our way down through Italy to Rome, and we went to Bishop Udall's church where he hid the Nazis, and they had a velvet rope. I felt like I was in the Da Vinci Code going in there, but they had this velvet rope across. And I said to my husband, thank God my husband comes with me because I'm so shy. And he's like, some people, when they see a velvet rope, they go, oh, we can't go in. When my husband sees a velvet rope, it's like, come on in. So
oh, it's my door. It's my special door.
Exactly. And so we went into he's like, let's just go around the velvet rope and go in the back. And that is where they must have kept it. It's a whole world back there where they could have kept it. And then we went to the Vatican, more velvet rope, and we saw, the Pope was there. We couldn't go into the Vatican because high security. And my husband said, look, there's people lining up over there. Let's go get in that line because I think they're bringing them in. And they were bringing them into the German cemetery. And so he said, let's get in the line. I have a German grandfather if they ask. So everybody in the line was speaking German. All of a sudden, the Swiss guards were like, okay, everybody in. And we all walked into Vatican City through the gates and went into this German cemetery. And I thought, there's no way Bishop Udall could be buried here. He was such a stain on the Catholic Church. They disavow him like, oh no, he helped Nazis. There he was, buried under one of the Stations of the Cross, the Women of Jerusalem, which is a very beloved Station of the Cross. We were like, this is like, it really was like the Da Vinci Code. We thought we got to get out of here in case someone knows why we're here. So an amazing thing, but really it's sad that he helped thousands of Nazis get away.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. That sounds like a great trip. I wish I had been there. I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Well, your previous 3 novels, Lilac Girls, Lost Roses, and Sunflower Sisters, as we mentioned, all connected directly to philanthropist Carolyn Faraday and her family. The Golden Doves is the first not to be drawn specifically from that family history, though there are some characters in this book that readers of Lilac Girls will recognize. Yeah. So what made you decide to step away from the Faraday-Woolsey universe that you have been so deeply involved with? And were there challenges that came with that departure?
That was my agent, basically. She said, no more books about Caroline. I was like, what do I do next? And she was like, do something different. And don't do 3 point of view characters. So of course I had to do 2. But I was excited to write more of a thriller and try something different. And I did want to keep a little bit of an umbilical cord to some of that, to Lilac Girls, because there were a lot of things that I didn't get to put in Lilac Girls that I put in this book. A lot of things about Ravensbrück, and everyone was asking me about Herta Oberhauser, the bad doctor of Lilac Girls. And I thought, what if Josie goes to see Herta, and Herta was in Landsberg prison, and I thought that would be like that was a really fun thing to write. So I always figure if it's fun to write, it'll be fun for people to read. So I peppered in a couple of Lilac Girls people.
I love that.
Just because you could.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, This is like when you've just had a baby and you bring it home from the hospital and someone says, when are you going to have your next baby? But are there any little sneak peeks about what's up next for you?
Sure. Yeah, I have two coming up. One, I always like to have two writing at the same time.
Wow.
With one, I get to, have fun with the other one.
Oh my God. I don't have that much room in my brain. You are a smarter
No.
woman than I am.
Oh, no, please. It's just more AD. If I get bored, like right around 3:00 is when I'm always like, eh. So I go and like plot the other one. But the first one is a book about Martha's Vineyard during World War II. And my mother, my family came to Martha's Vineyard in 1891, and my mom grew up there. And she used to talk about their boys who trained on Martha's Vineyard, because there's cliffs there, and they were training for Normandy. They were scaling the cliffs. And so I thought, why not write about that? And half of them didn't come home after Normandy, and they were always so sad about that. Plus, there were a lot of German U-boats all in those waters off of Martha's Vineyard. So that may play into the book. My mom told me that some of the Nazis came off of the U-boats onto Martha's Vineyard and also had dinner at a restaurant there. So that is super fun. So that's the Martha's Vineyard book. And that comes out in 2025, I guess. Yeah. And then the next is a true story that takes place not at Ravensbrück, but very close by. So, and it's already like giving me a lot of heartbreak, but it's so fun to research the true story.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna flash
on here.
Yeah, your energy is intimidating to me.
I know, I feel bad about myself.
Because
wait, you guys put on a show every Wednesday. I don't know how you guys do it. Honestly.
Mary Kay Andrews has the most energy of anyone I've ever met. I say that all the time.
It's so inspiring. Amazing.
Not true at all. Okay, well, we're getting close to finishing up, but we've got a couple. We haven't taken live questions in a while, and seems like E. Cohen wants to know what you read for pleasure, Martha.
Oh my God, E. Cohen, how nice of you. It's funny. I did an event at RJ Julia, which is the best place in the whole entire universe to do an event. And they offer the author one book which is such a nice thing. Yeah, and I panicked, and I chose, not panicked, but I chose Lessons in Chemistry because everyone's talking about it, and it's, going to be a movie. I wanted to read it. And so I just started Lessons in Chemistry. Yeah. Other than that, it's submarine books. So you do not want to hear it.
Okay. Name one submarine book that you're reading.
Oh God. Oh, I don't even know the names of them. They're so boring. They're just like, one of them is from like the US military, and it's all the boats that were downed by U-boats in the United States. So I'm going through all of them. I know.
It's basically like name one submarine boat you're not reading, probably, right? like you're reading them all.
There's one called Operation Drumbeat that actually reads like fiction a little bit. It's about all the U-boats and what they were doing. I've been watching a lot of movies about U-boats too.
That's really cool.
Yeah, like Das Boat.
Oh, that's awesome.
That doesn't sound like bedtime reading.
No, it's like nightmare reading. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Claustrophobic at all. It's like the worst.
Oh, that sounds. Oh my goodness. Well, Martha, we have lots of people writing in saying, Susie Baldwin says, I love all your books. Maria Lewis saying, can't wait to meet you on June 4th. You must have an appearance that she's going to. And Sharon Person saying, I've read Golden Doves and it is fantastic. So Martha, before you go, we would love to ask you, where can our viewers find you on the road and online in the coming weeks?
Oh, actually, I'm going to LA tomorrow on the 13th for Mother's Day weekend.
Oh, fun.
My daughter and I are back on the road. We did a pre-launch little Facebook Live together that we had so much fun doing. So we're going to do an event in LA on the 13th. And then I'm back to Connecticut, to Bethlehem, to Caroline's house on June 4th, which is it's already almost sold out. If people want to go, they have to hurry because the tours, and it's just, people go there to pay homage to Caroline, and it's going to be huge.
Wow.
So that's going to be fun.
Well,
With
that
all
is
the lilac.
fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
great, great. And Martha, people can find you. Is it marthahallkelly.com? Is that your website?
Yeah.
Okay, marthahallkelly.com. Perfect. Well, everybody out there, we hope you will pick up Martha's book. It was great. It comes endorsed by the full Friends and Fiction crew. I think we've all read it. We all loved it. And Martha, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was such a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for having me.
We
Mwah.
love
Bye, guys.
having you. Okay, so you can find all of our back episodes of Friends and Fiction on YouTube. And we will be right back here next week with the authors of 2 wildly different and entertaining novels. Food Network winner, TikTok sensation, and New York Times bestselling author Abby Jimenez will join us to discuss her sparkling new rom-com, Yours Truly. And #1 New York Times bestselling fantasy phenom, Rebecca Kwong, will be here to discuss her contemporary literary thriller, Yellowface. We have such a fun episode in store for you. So we'll see you next week.
Cheers again, Patti.
Woo!
Cheers. Woo!
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here. Here we are. We're back.
Oh, we're back.
Well, that was a great show. I don't know. Are we, you know what? Let's stick around for just a minute and have a little other celebration for Patti, right? Like
Let's
we're here,
do
we're
it,
on the
yes.
after show. Yes.
Yes. No, I thought that was such a great show, though, and there were such great guests, and it was just so interesting to hear about these different facets of history, and yeah, I mean, great writers, and
Yeah.
we get to do this. It's great.
And it's so fun to hear about the true stories behind these novels that we read that sweep us off our feet with these characters, but that are really grounded in history that still applies today. I mean, it applies in terms of the politics of today when we're talking about Martha, and it applies in terms of the coronation we just saw this weekend in terms of Jennifer. So
Yeah, I keep
very
thinking
relevant.
about how serendipitous the timing was for Jennifer's book.
Timing.
Yes, absolutely.
Timing. Yeah, I know. I wanted to ask her about that. We just didn't have time, but it's like, just, yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable how that all kind of lined up because, you know, obviously, like for people who might not understand publishing schedules, this book was in the works long before. I mean, Jennifer had no way of knowing that Queen Elizabeth was going to pass away or any of this was going to be happening. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. To line up, I mean, less than a month away, like for
Or
publishing
did
dates to be-
she? What a good plot for a
did
book.
she?
A good book.
You know, my dad was in the Air Force and he was stationed in England. And my mom and my older sister were in London during the coronation. I don't think they, my mother never talked about seeing the coronation, but she talked about my sister had a coronation baby buggy. And she had, you know, coronation souvenirs. So, you know, that's kind of a touchstone for me. So I'm definitely, when I'm in London in 2 weeks, I'm going to go check out Hazlitt's in Soho.
Got to.
For sure. And that'll be such an exciting time to be in London right on the heels of the coronation. I bet there'll still be like a little buzz of energy from that. So it's going to be great. I'm jealous.
Souvenirs. Maybe like a fascinator, kind of like custom made for me, or, you know, just something small like that.
Well, you know how crafty I am. Maybe I'll make you one.
Ooh.
Fantastic.
Well, you loved your wedding veil so much that I sent you.
Turnabout is fair play, right?
You know, I have to tell everybody, we had been plotting how we were going to celebrate Patti's debut on the list, because we all knew it was going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And we decided we would just manifest the shit out of it.
Yep.
So Kristy had champagne sent, right? To Patti is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania tonight. And so Kristy, talk to what you had to do to get that champagne there.
Well, it was hilarious. Well, I found out that Instacart now, it makes sense now, but there were all these like really simple ways that we were like, oh, we can get champagne. And it just was not working out. And I texted them finally. I was like, you guys, spent like an hour. I've called like every store I can think of. I've done Instacart. I've done this. There's this thing called Mini Bar. I've like signed up for these services I didn't even have. And I get to the end and they're like, we don't deliver here. I've called all these stores. I've tried to find somebody to go get it. Like, I just don't know what to do. And as soon as I texted them, I was like, I'm just going to go on wine.com. It's in like 2 days. I'm sure they can't get it there. And they were like, overnight delivery. And I was like, cool. So that's out. I won't get back. But so hopefully Patti will have some good champagne from all of us waiting when she gets home. And we've started without her, clearly.
Obviously.
And it really is, though. I mean, it really is like it's like we all have.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's not so much that we started without her as counting Ron and Meg, like 5/6 of the person who hit the list have already started drinking. Patty's just the final sixth of the like. I think we were as worried about her and as invested in her as we would in our own books. I mean, it's beautiful how we've all morphed into one person.
We were all laughing because it was like right before we knew the list was going to come out. Kristen's like, I'm taking her to the trampoline park. And I was like, Will and I are going on a bike ride. And Mary Kay's like, I'm going to get my nails done. And Meg was like, I'm going to the liquor store. But we all had to distract ourselves. We were like, oh my gosh, we have to go do something. And little Will kept looking at me and was like, Mom, it's not your book. And I was like, I know, but kind of is.
It is also. Yes, exactly. That's right.
I mean, we all had sympathy labor pains. And I think since we've been doing this show for 3 years, we've gone through these cycles like 3 times of how while we're writing it, it's like, oh my God, this book sucks.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God, I don't have an idea for the next book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then no one's going to buy it. No one's going to like it.
Well, and we've gone through, some of us have gone, including myself, including Patti, we've gone through the heartbreak of putting your heart and soul into a book and then having it not hit the list, which really hurts. So like, I think we wanted it for her even more because of that, because it was so deserved and we knew how hard she'd worked and how much she'd put into it. And it just,
me too. It is. It's really hard when you have worked, and it's so, I mean, oh my gosh, it's so, there's so much that you can't predict and you can have the best numbers in the world as you know, Kristin, and they don't pick you, they don't pick you. And it's really hard. So anyway, we're really proud of her, but
we are.
Let's all go call her.
Yes.
I think she's probably still signing books.
She probably is.
Probably. Weeping and laughing through it or something, right?
And Meg has been with her for the past 10 days. And so Meg is she's been living it every day. So, and Meg's texting.
We told you all. Oh, sadly, she's had no champagne yet. Well, she has some waiting for her. It was delivered yesterday. I can confirm. Signature.
She says she's in Lancaster, PA. Kristy had a horse and buggy deliver it to her aunt's house where she's staying.
Yeah.
Well, guys, what a night. I think we all feel emotionally and physically exhausted. Like today felt like the longest Wednesday in the history of Wednesdays as we waited for that New York Times news to come in. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, it wasn't even my book. I told them I got 14 pages of editing done. And just so everyone knows, like, I need to get at least 50 to 75 a day done. I got 14 because I would do like one page and then I'd be like, wonder what's like, what, I don't know what I was looking at to see what was going on with Patti's book, but something.
Yeah. I was refreshing and checking and things that had nothing to do with anything, just hoping for some like predictive value or something. Yeah. I don't know.
I stress, I didn't want to mention this, but I did stress clean my fridge.
That's amazing.
Oh,
I stress
maybe-
ate Doritos. So you did a better stress thing than I did.
Could you come over and stress clean my fridge the next time you're feeling like you need to burn off some anxiety?
Yeah, the number of bottles of salad dressing we have in our fridge.
Yeah, same.
It's
I know
just,
things are bad when I start cleaning my house. It's
it's
things are bad.
disturbing how many bottles of salad dressing.
Yes. Our problem is pickles and olives. We have like a whole
Oh,
shelf of
yeah.
like pickles and olives like shoved in the back, and I love those things. I don't know why we don't eat them when we open the jars. But
Well, I will tell you that while I was stress cleaning, I did throw out a jar. I hope my husband mostly watches. He's down in the Keys fishing. I hope he's not watching the after show because I did throw out a jar of pickled herring I found.
ooh, yeah, that sounds disgusting.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
It's fun.
I actually tomorrow's trash day, so we put out the trash on Wednesday nights, and so I was just putting the trash can out, and I went through I was like, I wonder what's in here. I went through like the drawer where we keep the cheese and the meat, and there was definitely some stuff that I was like, that looks like a science project. That shouldn't be there anymore. So yeah, get it.
Okay, well, we've gone from the sublime to the disgusting. So I
Time to
think
go.
it's time for us to sign off. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Congratulations, Patti.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.